picking up where I left off. Appalachia is interesting because of the ancient nature of those mountains. Those mountains go back way, 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 way back. And they're green and worn down because they've been around for so long versus the Rockies, who are still kind of the newbies on the block in terms of mountains. So, there's a lot of lore, obviously, in that region. And the locals are very fond of that. And that sense of insularity and mystery and intrigue is makes for a potent setting. Now, what's interesting is, like, where I grew up was very much in the outer perimeter of that, very outer edge of that, but it was still there. And it was almost the kind of thing where when I found that out, I was like, wow, that's kind of interesting. I never really knew that, but at the same time, I was kind of unintentionally aware of it, because there were certain areas where I grew up. When you drove out of the township, the core of the town, you could find yourself off in some areas where things were different, mysterious, rugged land. It's atypical for what one might think in an eastern region, but it's there if you know how to look for it. And those who grew up in those regions that I grew up in, they know the regions. I'm not going to call it places out, but they were there. And that vibe is conducive as a setting for horror fiction, particularly Gothic. One could do literary too, obviously. One thing people love about, like, just pulling it out of to like a movie context, like when people really react to the Deer Hunter, is that setting, that vibe. I think that's a almost exhausting movie in terms of its approach, but it's there. It's ever present in that particular ethnic groups that came in with the steel industries, for example. And I think as a writer, even though I feel like one can get inspiration from anywhere, wherever you are, it's nice to have that to draw from as source material, because the people, the places, how things look, ramshackle things that are left behind, vestiges of former glory, ruins. It's impossible to look at a number of any number of things in the Rust Belt and not see ruins. Broken down buildings, broken down cars, ghastly polluted lakes or rivers or ponds that have been ill-used over the years. It is absolutely a sense, probably there is a sense of abandonment and lost. I'm going to pull from a fantasy thing, but it's the idea of Mordor. Like, Mordor embodies the Rust Belt aesthetic, just to pull it out of Tolkien's fantasy efforts. And no doubt he, in his own very English way, was pulled from the industrialization of England, probably vexed him in certain ways. In America, for Rust Belt people, we're living in that kind of thing. And being in that place, in addition to surviving and functioning within it, there is a sense of us versus them, a sense of insiders versus outsiders, a sense of wariness, concern, feeling that the bottom can drop out at any moment, either in your home, either in your life, your home, your car, whatever, factory that you work at, the company that you work at, they can just. And so it's a very human kind of feeling, and it's a very alienating kind of place. And so, from a writer perspective, it's a rich area to mine, to pull from. And if you are from the Rust Belt and you're inclined to write, I think you should bring a notebook and take notes. Take notes of things, because there are a lot of things to see. And there is a sense of sorrow, a sense of loss, a sense of lost potential. Again, fractured dreams, and always rust. Rust everywhere, gets into everything. Decay, destruction, and oblivion. All great topics, all three things to be mine as a writer.